Hello, this is Dan, Nowman Niswander. You're watching the Nowman Show with Caleb Maupin, who is the New York City correspondent for RT. He's also the founder of the Center for Political Innovation, and he's an author. So something just recently happened in the last few days. It's a book, I guess, right? Called Kamala Harris and the Future of America.
Yep.
Tell us what has happened, Caleb.
Well, I wrote this book 4 years ago in September of 2020. It made a little bit of a splash, got some reviews. You can look on Goodreads. A lot of people liked it. It was in some communist newspapers in Britain, some India's newspapers in India, made reviews of it. Didn't make a huge splash, but been online for the past 4 years. And I figured there might be a slight uptick in sales with Kamala Harris named as the presumptive nominee of the Democrat Party. But then what happened? Well, Monday, I got an email from Amazon saying that there was some kind of issue with the cover. I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll fix this immediately. And it gave me the option of fixing it. So I put a completely generic cover on the book. So since they said there was an issue with the copyright with the cover or something like that, which doesn't really make sense because I had it independently designed, etc. So then I went to re-upload it with the new cover, rejected. Went to re-upload it with the new cover again, rejected. And every time I did it, it was rejected. The other thing is that generally, when there's an issue with a book on Amazon, what they do while it's being resolved is the book is still up there. It just says copies currently not available. That's what generally happens, right? But with this book, it's been completely scrubbed. If you go to any of the links to the page, it just says this is not there. It has a picture of a puppy. It says this isn't there. Now, this is clearly censorship. On the day that Kamala Harris became the presumptive nominee, a book that's been available for 4 years was pulled. They won't let it be restored with a new cover. This is censorship. Now, it's on Lulu right now, and I've sold hundreds of copies in the last few days. People are buying it in
Fantastic.
mass. And, all kinds of outrage is rising. Max Blumenthal has spoken up, so have others. Yeah, we continue, but this is clearly a case of censorship, no doubt about it.
Wow. I mean, and it's been up for 4 years, and now all of a sudden, the timing is uncanny, right?
Yeah,
No,
yeah. I mean, it's pretty obvious what's going on here. If they were to let me re-upload it with a new cover, okay. If the timing hadn't been on the very day that Kamala Harris, got the nomination, okay. If they were, if they said copies currently not available, but the book was still listed, okay. But no, this is very, very clearly Amazon has decided this book is not allowed.
and if they tell you that here's your options, right, of what you can do because of the cover, and then people still can't access it, that's clearly censorship, and we should be making a
Yeah.
statement about that.
Oh, it clearly is. And Amazon is not just some corner bookstore that says, okay, we want to carry this book, we don't want to carry that book. They're an ultra monopoly, right? If you're not on Amazon, you're almost not in print, right? So I'm on Lulu, which is my other option, and we'll see what happens. But this is pretty blatant. I've never seen anything like this. So yeah.
What's in the book exactly that you think that would be so controversial?
Well, that's the thing. It's not just a partisan hit piece on Kamala Harris. I'm above that. I use Kamala Harris to make three political points, but I do talk about her record as prosecutor and all the awful things she did. I know you all are out in California and you're very familiar with what she did as prosecutor with the drug lab scandal, people going to prison because of false positive test results from drug testing, Kevin Cooper and the execution where she tried to block DNA evidence, trying to keep people in prison and arguing that their cheap labor was needed by the state. There's many examples of what she did. And I talk about that in the book, but I make a wider political point about CIA manipulation of leftist circles, how she grew up in the California New Left with her father being a Marxist economist. I talk about the desire for vengeance that she has and some of her personal baggage from, the ugly divorce, et cetera, that she went through. I talk about geopolitics and how it's very clear that the Hillary Clinton faction that ran the State Department during Barack Obama's first term in office, they've picked her to be their candidate and they've groomed her, so to speak, and they've used her personality, kind of serves their ends. I talk about all of that in the book. It's only 133 pages, not a huge tome. But I'm proud of it. I think it's one of my better pieces, and I'm glad it's getting a lot of buzz, but I'm not glad that Amazon decided it's not allowed to be part of the discourse. I am a US citizen. I was born here. I might have friends in Russia or work at RT, but no Russian had anything to do with the book. I wrote it all of my own free will. And if I had told my Russian friends I was planning to write it, they probably would have tried to stop me and said, "Don't rock the boat. We have enough trouble with RT over here." So this is not a Russian conspiracy. I wrote this of my own free will as an American, with concerns that I have about Kamala Harris and who she is. So there you go.
Yeah, and considering, what's going on in the world right now, person that I know that you have studied uh, a lot and have respect for, uh, Lennon, and I don't mean John Lennon. It once said, "There are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks decades happen." And I mean, and just recently we saw, uh, well, as far as we know, an attempted assassination on the former president and then candidate Trump. And then about a week later, all of a sudden, very quietly on Twitter, in the afternoon, lazy Sunday afternoon, Biden bows out of the race, and then he endorses Kamala Harris, and all this happens so quickly, and everything else that's been going on, Palestine and Ukraine and BRICS, and the economic summit in St. Petersburg, Russia, and then there's the Beijing declaration that just happened, and their diplomatic agenda, which is to stand, for the Palestinians and against the genocide. So basically, we're seeing ICJ stepping up, with basically crimes against humanity. I mean, all of this is happening so fast. What are your thoughts on that? Where do you think we might be? What might we see next? What's going to happen next, do you think?
Well, I think it's very clear that the Biden administration and their policies around the world are failing. And there's concern about what comes next. I think Kamala Harris, if she becomes president, would take things in a much worse direction. She represents New America Foundation, Anne Marie Slaughter, and those kind of voices that want to foment global revolution and unrest for their own reasons, to create and foment what they call the open international system, which is imperialism. It's capitalism in its monopolistic stage. And they want, endless chaos, et cetera, to spread and maintain the rule of Western banks and corporations. Whereas I think Donald Trump represents one faction that is self-interested, that may not be fully on board with that, and is probably more clear-headed in how it understands things. And the fact that Donald Trump faced that assassination attempt, the fact that he's got J.D. Vance, who said things about Ukraine, about not wanting to send money to Ukraine, et cetera, all of that seems to indicate that we'd probably be safer from nuclear annihilation in World War III with a Trump administration rather than a Harris administration. So, I don't endorse any candidate, and my organization certainly doesn't. We have people in our group that'll probably vote for different candidates, et cetera. But it looks to me like Kamala Harris is the main danger, and especially on the global stage, someone as unstable as her and someone as indifferent to other people's suffering as her shouldn't be making our foreign policy judgments.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today again, Caleb, and on the Nowman Show. Where can people learn more about your work?
I'm at the Center for Political Innovation, cpiusa.org. That's where you can find out all about us. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
Great.
And I know you're on all the social media platforms, Facebook and
As
Rumble and
long as they let me,
YouTube.
I'm on them. Yeah, yeah. Just Caleb Maupin, Calebmaupin. So there you go.
Thank you so much, Caleb. This is Dan Nowman Niswander for the Nowman Show. Stay present in the moment, always.
In the late 1800s, the Neo-Malthusian Society was very popular among many of the wealthiest people in Britain. And they thought that all these problems of unemployment and labor strikes and uprisings, they said, well, this isn't the problem of capitalism. This is just there's too many people. And the phrase useless eaters was widely promoted. And the idea was that there are too many people in the world. There's overpopulation. I know Margaret Sanger, who was a feminist and a socialist activist, she after the Russian Revolution, she saw that the Soviet Union was not the free sex, free love paradise she was hoping for. And so she became a Malthusian. And during the Great Depression, she went around saying that the Great Depression was caused by overpopulation. And she spoke at Ku Klux Klan meetings. She argued that birth control and abortion could be used to eliminate certain races and certain ethnic groups, and that she went from being a socialist to being, a far-right racist and such, because she bought into this idea that we need to reduce the population. There are too many people in the world, and that is how many of the richest people in the world world feel. And I don't think that's hard to discover. And it's not conspiratorial. The idea that they're all sitting up there in a smoke-filled room plotting to kill the whole human race, I don't buy, right? That would obviously be crazy. But the idea that many of them believe that the problem facing the world is there are too many people and that there's too much growth, that is being widely promoted. That is almost the party line in the United States. And it's wrong. It's not true, right? The human race, human beings are the source of all wealth. We're not useless eaters. Human beings are the creators of all the value that exists in the world. With human beings, we can advance. And people talk about limited resources. This is a very common thing I hear from people. Well, it's true that there are limited resources in the world. And, if we were still burning wood to heat our homes, we would have deforested the planet centuries ago. But we don't. We started burning coal, and now we burn natural gas. We have electrical heat. And that the whole history of the human race is our reinvention of our relationship with nature, right? When one fuel source, one energy source, one mode of production becomes outmoded, we reach a higher plane. And that's why China is putting so much money and funding into fusion energy research right now, because fossil fuels has its limitations. And fossil fuels could very well be contributing to global warming. I'm not a scientist.
I think it's definitely contributing to pollution. I mean, where we grew up, I grew up in Ohio and Indiana also, in one place where I was born actually is not that far from Orville, by the way. Where Ashland, Ohio is where I was born. Okay. But we live mostly in Northwest Ohio and Central Indiana, but we lived in Oklahoma. Preacher's kids, we move around a lot. But I remember seeing in a lot of small towns and rural areas, a lot of creeks and rivers and streams that were, when I was a kid, very polluted. And I knew that sometimes there'd be railroads nearby, and you never knew what chemicals might have been going into the waterways. So I remember thinking, like, man, this probably used to be really pristine not that long ago. So there definitely is pollution. So people who want to try to excuse climate change and use that as a reason to, well, there's not really that much pollution. Capitalism or modern industrial society didn't create that. Like, come on. It certainly did. I mean, that's why it is. That's why it doesn't look pristine anymore. And you go to other parts of the world where that didn't happen, and it's pristine because that it is modern civilization and basically caused by capitalism.
Yeah, and that we're not poo-pooing any environmental concern, right? And we want to interact with our environment and use our resources in a sustainable and logical way, not just based on whatever's profitable in the short term. But I think that the problem is that the majority of voices that have dominance in the environmental movement take the attitude that human beings themselves are the problem. And that is a very toxic worldview, right? And that is a pessimistic worldview. And that is really what we're up against. And I would argue that really what it is that it's the big monopolies, the imperialists. They are at the top of the world, right? The big bankers of London and New York City, Wall Street, and the Western countries, they are at the top of the world. And the world is continuing to grow beyond their grip. And there's this whole new economy coming out of Russia and China and Bolivarianism in South America and some of these African countries that have asserted their independence. There's a whole new economy in the world. And so the Western elite are now saying, well, game over. The game must end now, so we stay at the top indefinitely. And that's not how humanity works. I mean, human beings are constantly moving toward a higher plane. And, maybe we need to do so more efficiently. I think fusion energy is a great alternative to fossil fuels. And I'm very excited about China's research in that direction. Their recent space shuttle, space probe that went to the far side of the moon to collect helium-3. I mean, I'm all about moving beyond fossil fuels. But the point is to move higher. And the idea that we can somehow degrow the human race, it's not only is it fruitless, because that's just not how human beings work, right? But it's also very dangerous. And I would argue that was the basis of Nazism. And the Nazis, they tried to exterminate different races, and they created a slave labor underclass, and that was the basis for a lot of the genocidal crimes, the famines that were imposed by the British Empire and the various territories that they colonized, and that degrowth is very, very dangerous. It is psychologically damaging. Young people now, there's such depression and all of that. Well, maybe it's because the TV and the schools are telling them that they are a cancer on the planet, that they are no good, right? And that's being promoted. I mean, would you feel good about yourself if you'd been told that your whole life? Obviously not, So we need to push back against this degrowth ideology. But I don't think that negates environmentalism. I'm also the founder of the Center for Political Innovation, which is an educational socialist nonprofit. We educate people about opposing war and opposing empire, and trying to bring a new perspective to anti-imperialism and socialism, looking beyond left and right, but toward what brings us together, how we can build community.
Hello, this is Dan Nowman, Niswander. Center for Political Innovation talks a lot about growth and degrowth, and I'm here in downtown Los Angeles, and it's a really good example of how degrowth has impacted the community of downtown Los Angeles just itself, which it's still a thriving metropolis of a lot of different kinds of businesses, small businesses, big corporations, offices for multinational corporations. It's all here, but you can also see the impact that has changed over time. So many empty spaces, places for lease or for sale. It was thriving a lot more in the past. And that's because in order for the current system to continue to dominate, it has to focus on degrowth, which means basically the workers are still productive, but the profit margins have to continue to go up for the businesses. And of course, the bigger the corporations, the more profits they have to have. They have to satisfy the stockholders and all this kind of thing. And it's not a sustainable system because you see homeless people on the streets, but like a lot of these buildings, even this hotel here, is not really being utilized 100%. It's not technically really open like it used to be in the past. So what happened, basically? Well, it's capitalism has had to go to other parts of the world in order for it to continue to grow. And it's not even really about growth. It's about what brings the most profits to just a few. We at the Center for Political Innovation, we know growth benefits everyone, not just some people. And that's where it's up to us. So we have to reach out to people, even if it seems just like it's a little bit at a time, and make those connections. Share the message. Spread the word. Growth for all. Growth for the economy means everyone benefits, and that is an important message. If you haven't read the booklet, Do You Believe in Growth? You can find it online on the CPIUSA.org website. I highly recommend it. I'm still reading it and getting a lot out of it, and I'm going to be sharing more and more of it with others. Hello, this is Dan Nowman, Niswander, and the morning message now is about the booklet, the CPI booklet, Do You Believe in Growth? And there's a lot I can say about that booklet that's really very, very important, and it is online. If you don't have a copy of it yourself, then you can order that from Amazon. I want to talk about solutions because Caleb and the organization and the members are very good about talking about history, but we also need to go into more details about solutions. And the booklet does talk about the Hoover movement. It talks about how they're prepared for what's coming down the road, as Caleb has referred to as strategic equilibrium, which means our voices are going to be heard more and more. And maybe it's already happening because there's just so much stuff going on, right? So, but the Uhuru movement already has a community plan. Now, some people I know, they are talking about, getting a piece of land away from the city. Some people have already done that here in California. And they live, out towards Joshua Tree. It's kind of a building little community village out there, whatever you want to call it. It's usually rich people who can afford to buy land, and they go out there, and it's quite a ways away from civilization. But from what I understand, they still get supplies. I don't know exactly how that happens, but and there's intentional communities, which is kind of the same kind of idea, but you buy a piece of property. There's maybe up to 10 people that can live on it, and you can have a garden and farming and just your own schooling for kids or whatever it is. But it's usually just like 10 people on a piece of land, and it's usually also in a rural area. You're usually not going to think of that as being in a city limit. But there's also the reality, like the Uhuru movement realized, that you are going to be in the city. So here there's an eco village in Los Angeles. I know Caliacuno down in Mississippi has Jackson Rising, and they stay in the city itself, and they create farmers markets, community centers, and community gardens, and educational classes of different kinds to educate themselves about issues important to the community and people living in the community. And these kinds of things are important because not everybody's going to want to go out into rural areas or the countryside. So we have to have a plan for everywhere that we are as a solution, and to be ready when the time comes to basically do our own thing. And this is requiring some planning. I mean, and this is what, even people that I'm connecting to here in the Los Angeles area have been working on. And there is the idea of the worker-owned cooperative. Now, I'm at the Pasadena Convention Center right now, and there's some conference going on right now called Employee Owner Company Meeting. Now, a worker-owned cooperative does fit in somehow, but we also have to understand, though, that the system is going to need to change because the system that's in place incorporates employers and employees, and that's part of the problem when it gets so big that, most of the profits go to a very small group of people. It's not democratic, and it just needs different terminology, a different structure to where there is abundance for everyone, because that's why the book Do You Believe in Growth is important, because growth doesn't need to be limited just so a handful of people can stay on top with most of the wealth and resources. So we have to be wise in how we go forward, and that's one of the many reasons why the Center for Political Innovation is so important, because we have to continue building community as we educate each other about these ideas and focus on top priorities as much as possible, and realize that the workers do have a say just like anyone else, and maybe be an owner and have one person, one vote in a worker-owned cooperative. That's fine. But we also do need a government that actually works for the people and not just a small group of people at the top. And there's so much going on in the world right now, as we all see on a weekly basis, and certain things will continue to unfold. We'll start learning more and more why things have happened the way they have up to this point. And it's important to stay on top of it, history, current events and all that, but also to build community, do outreach, connect with strangers, find common ground, talk about these ideas, give people a copy of that booklet or link them to the website so they can find the download there. get the information out so people can start, talking with each other, coming up with ideas and inspirations. And I'll end this morning message with this is the Pasadena Civic Auditorium here in Pasadena. And it's the home of multiple seasons of a very popular television show called America's Got Talent. Now, I don't really want to promote that show, even though I was on season 15, episode 1, right before the COVID lockdown. I was on that stage, and it got broadcasted Memorial Day weekend and the 4th of July weekend. The reason why I want to bring that up is because I was able to give a message to the world about what was going on at that time without actually using certain words, like COVID or pandemic. And it's all about bringing people together. And I'll play it for you right now. This is Dan Nowman, Niswander. In addition to that, always stay present in the moment now.
And why America's Got Talent?
I believe that it's a critical time in our history right now to bring people together, and I think what better way to do it than with music?
All right, Mr. Nowman.
I'm here in Arlington Garden, and what a huge, beautiful willow tree here behind me. It's got to be, I would say, at least 100 years old. Massive tree trunk there. And I always love being in nature, as we all should. Even though technology is great in many ways, in other ways it may not be necessary. We always need to defer back to the original, natural ways of doing things also, and find ways to work together with all species and all life, because we're all here together on this earth planet. We're all one whole. Yes, we're individuals, but you can't have an individual without the whole. And I think that's something that's very important with the message of Center for Political Innovation too, is to acknowledge that there really is abundance in the universe. And that abundance is for all, not just for some. The scarcity that has been created is not natural. And we need to speak up about that in our conversations with people that we talk to in our lives, whether they're friends or family or strangers that we meet as we go about our day-to-day lives, because we really are all in this together, and our voices will be heard more and more as time goes on, because the establishment is obviously arguing about how to proceed forward in various ways, how to split up the resources, and it's up to us to work on creating coalitions going forward. Hundreds of billions of dollars are needed here at home in the United States, not thousands of miles away for imperialistic agendas. And I think that message would be very clearly understood and accepted by the vast majority of people. Wouldn't you agree? This is Dan Nowman, Niswander. Have a wonderful day, okay? Peace and love.